He walked into the office, ready to buy his dream home. But when he mentioned his budget, the receptionist's smile faded, her eyes full of judgment. "I'm not sure you can afford this." He froze. What she didn't know was that he wasn't just a buyer. He was about to become her boss. What happened next will shock you. Let's start from the beginning. It was a typical Monday morning in downtown Los Angeles when Jordan Lewis, a young black entrepreneur, walked into the luxury real estate agency. The city buzzed with the usual energy, but for Jordan, today was different. Dressed in a sharp suit, his presence commanded attention, a quiet confidence radiating from him. He wasn't just another potential buyer. Jordan had just bought the agency. It was now his, a move that would change everything. Ellen Fitzgerald, a seasoned realtor with over 15 years at the agency, greeted him at the door. She smiled, professional, almost rehearsed. But that smile didn't last long. As they spoke, Jordan casually mentioned he was looking for a multi-million-dollar property. That's when Ellen's demeanor shifted. For a moment, her eyes flickered, scanning Jordan from head to toe. He could feel the weight of her gaze, the subtle judgment lurking behind her polished exterior. Her smile faltered just slightly, but it was enough for him to notice. "We have plenty of luxury homes," Ellen said, her voice cold. "But I'm not sure you'd be able to afford them." Her words dripped with a thinly veiled prejudice, the kind so ingrained it barely registered in her mind. To her, Jordan didn't fit the image of someone who belonged in the world of high-end real estate. The sting of her judgment hit harder than he expected. Jordan had faced prejudice all his life, but this moment felt different, raw. She had assumed he was just another black man out of place in this world. But Jordan had fought his way to the top, and the weight of her words was nothing more than fuel for the fire. He stood his ground, his expression unwavering. This was only the beginning, and Ellen had no idea what was coming. As Ellen began showing Jordan a few properties, her attitude was unmistakably dismissive. She barely glanced at him, offering only the most basic details about each home, nothing about the intricate design, the history, or the unique features that made these multi-million-dollar properties stand out. Jordan could feel her indifference, her eyes skimming over him, her words clipped and almost mechanical. It was as if she assumed he was just another passing interest in a world he didn't belong to. With each property, Ellen's skepticism grew clearer. The way she eyed him, the barely there smile, the coldness in her voice. It was all so blatant. Jordan's curiosity turned into confusion, then anger. What had made her so sure that he didn't belong here? He had earned every inch of the success that had brought him to this point. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, had led to this moment. Yet, to Ellen, he was still just a black man, someone who didn't fit the profile of a luxury home buyer. He tried to shake off the thoughts, but the more she downplayed the luxury of the homes, the sharper his frustration became. He had seen it before, people like Ellen, who assumed his achievements were anomalies, that his place in a high-end world was somehow temporary. The anger in his chest began to rise. Was this really how the world saw him? Was it still 2025? Or had time somehow reversed itself, taking him back to a period where people like him were forever judged by the color of their skin and not the strength of their accomplishments? He clenched his jaw, determined to stay composed, but the weight of her prejudice was heavy. The day's interactions were starting to blur together, but one thing was clear. This wasn't just about real estate. It was about a fight Jordan had been fighting his whole life. At the final house, a stunning penthouse with a panoramic view of the city, Ellen crossed the line. As they stepped into the grand, sunlit space, she cast a quick glance around before turning to Jordan with a faint, condescending smile. "I'm afraid this place might be a bit too upscale for someone like you." she said, her tone dripping with disdain, her eyes sparkling with a mockery that was impossible to miss. Jordan felt the words cut through him like a blade. He had taken all the subtle slights, all the backhanded assumptions about his worth. But this was different. This wasn't just about real estate. This was about his very right to exist in this space, to claim what he had worked tirelessly for. He had been patient, calm, controlled, but now his anger was undeniable. He could feel the heat rise in his chest as his fists clenched. He stepped toward the door of the penthouse, pushing it open with deliberate force. The city sprawled beneath him, a breathtaking mosaic of lights and life. Yet, for all its beauty, it couldn't erase the bitter taste of Ellen's words. He stood there, the cool air rushing in, feeling the weight of her judgment pressing down on him. "You're wrong about me," Jordan said, his voice unwavering, though it hummed with an undercurrent of fury. His gaze met Ellen's with quiet intensity, challenging her to see him as he truly was, not as some stereotype, but as a man who belonged here just as much as anyone else. "I'm not here to prove myself to you or anyone else, but I think it's time you learned a very valuable lesson." Ellen blinked, caught off guard, her expression faltering as confusion spread across her face. She couldn't comprehend what was happening, what he was about to do. But Jordan was done waiting for people to change their minds about him. He was done being underestimated, and he wasn't going to let this moment slip by. The next morning, the office was alive with whispers. Jordan had been anticipating this moment for weeks. He walked into the building with the official documents in hand, the weight of them feeling like a promise fulfilled. Today was the day he would take control. He strode toward Ellen's office, his every step deliberate, and knocked once before entering. She was behind her desk, her eyes flicking up in shock as she saw him. Her face had gone pale, the color draining from it as the reality of the situation set in. "I hope you had a chance to enjoy the properties yesterday," Jordan said smoothly, his voice controlled, but carrying a sharp edge. He wasn't here to make small talk, and his tone made that clear. Ellen's expression faltered. Confusion clouded her features for a split second, but it quickly gave way to disbelief as Jordan slid a thick envelope across the desk toward her. She hesitated, but then reached for it, her hand trembling slightly as she opened it. The document inside made her freeze. "I'm the new owner of this agency," Jordan announced, his words punctuated with quiet authority. The shock on Ellen's face was priceless. Her mouth parted slightly, eyes wide with the dawning realization of her mistake. The woman who had underestimated him, who had dismissed him so easily, now faced the consequences of her own arrogance. The realization hit her like a sledgehammer, and for a moment, she could do nothing but stare. "I'll be looking forward to working with you in the future, Ellen," Jordan continued, his voice cool and calculated. "But I'm afraid your actions have consequences. I think it's time for a change around here." Ellen stood slowly, her face flushed with anger and humiliation as she began packing her things. Her movements were stiff, the weight of the moment pressing on her. As she left the office for the last time, Jordan watched her go, a sense of satisfaction building in him. The system had tried to keep him out, but now he held the reins. This was no longer her domain. He had claimed what was his, and the world would know it.